In the early morning of September 14, 2025, in a small coastal town in southern Italy, a 300-pound marble statue plummeted from a 200-foot cliff. Witnesses claimed they saw a man deliberately push it over the edge. What happened next would shake an entire community and challenge everything they thought they knew about faith, judgment, and truth. The town of Porto Santo had stood for centuries, perched between rugged cliffs and the Mediterranean Sea. The statue of the Virgin Mary had occupied the clifftop shrine for over 150 years, a landmark visible from the harbor below. Fishermen touched their foreheads in respect when passing it. Tourists photographed it at sunset. It was more than stone, it was identity. That September morning, 3 witnesses reported seeing a young man in traditional Middle Eastern clothing approach the shrine at 6:47 a.m. Security footage from a nearby cafe captured grainy images of someone standing near the statue. At 6:52 a.m., the sound of stone scraping against stone echoed across the cliff face. Then, the crash. The statue shattered on the rocks below. Fragments scattered across the beach. The shrine's stone pedestal remained empty, toppled on its side. Within minutes, the carabinieri arrived. Local police chief Marco Bellini surveyed the scene with growing concern. He knew what this meant for Porto Santo. The town had welcomed a small community of North African immigrants over the past decade, families seeking work in the fishing industry and tourism sector. Relations had been peaceful, if somewhat distant. But this could ignite something dangerous. By 9 a.m., photos of the destroyed statue flooded social media. By noon, crowds gathered at the harbor. Anger rippled through the Italian residents. The immigrant community retreated into their homes, sensing the shift in the air. The witnesses described the suspect. Male, approximately 25 to 30 years old, wearing a jalaba, with dark hair and beard. They'd seen him near the mosque on Via Roma. That was enough for the crowd. Chief Bellini made the decision to act quickly. His officers identified a possible suspect by 2 p.m., Yousef Amrani, a 28-year-old Moroccan man who worked at the harbor. He'd been seen near the cliff that morning. He wore traditional clothing. He fit the description. When officers arrived at Yousef's small apartment, he answered the door with confusion in his eyes. He didn't resist. He didn't shout. He simply asked, "What is this about?" At the station, Yousef sat across from Chief Bellini in the interrogation room. The recorder was running. "Where were you this morning between 6:30 and 7 a.m.? Bellini asked. "Walking. I walk every morning before work." "Where?" "Along the coastal path. I do this every day. For my health." "Near the shrine?" Yousef hesitated. "I pass by it, yes." "Did you touch the statue?" "No. I would never." 3 witnesses saw someone matching your description push it off the cliff. Yousef's face paled. "That's impossible. I would never do such a thing. I respect all faiths. My mother taught me this." But respect wasn't enough. The evidence pointed to him. The town wanted answers. By evening, Yousef Amrani was formally arrested on charges of destruction of religious property and incitement of religious hatred. Outside the station, crowds chanted. Some demanded justice. Others demanded deportation. The imam from the local mosque issued a statement condemning any act of religious vandalism, but his words were drowned in the noise. In his cell, Yousef sat with his head in his hands. He knew the truth, but truth seemed irrelevant now. Detective Sofia Russo arrived in Porto Santo the following morning. The regional prosecutor's office had sent her specifically because of her reputation for methodical investigation. She didn't work from emotion. She worked from evidence. Sofia stood at the clifftop shrine, examining the empty pedestal. The morning sun cast long shadows across the stone platform. She photographed everything: the scuff marks, the position of the toppled pedestal, the angle of the cliff edge. Below, forensic technicians combed through the statue fragments. The marble had broken into 17 major pieces. Each fragment was photographed, measured, and catalogued. "What do you see?" Chief Bellini asked, approaching from behind. "I see questions," Sophia replied. "A 300-pound statue doesn't fall easily. It would require significant force. The suspect is strong. He works on fishing boats." "Maybe." Sophia crouched near the pedestal base. "But look at these marks. The statue didn't slide. It was lifted and tipped. So one person doing that would leave specific traces. Footprints, disturbed soil, signs of strain. I don't see them yet." Sophia interviewed the 3 witnesses separately. Their stories aligned on major points but diverged on details, a common pattern in genuine testimony. They'd seen someone near the shrine. They'd heard the crash. They'd seen the figure leave. But when Sophia pressed for specifics, the accounts became less certain. "Was he tall or short?" she asked Maria Conti, a 62-year-old shopkeeper who'd been opening her store. "Average height, I think. Or maybe tall. It was far away." "What exactly was he wearing?" "A robe. One of those religious robes." "A jalaba?" "Yes, that." "What color?" Maria paused. "Beige or white?" It was early. The light was strange. Similar patterns emerged with the other witnesses. They'd seen something, yes. But the certainty they expressed publicly didn't match the uncertainty in Sophia's interview room. Sophia visited the mosque on Via Roma. The Imam, Hassan al-Mansuri, received her with cautious politeness. His community was frightened. "Do you know Yousef Amrani?" Sophia asked. "Of course. He prays here regularly. He's a good man. Respectful, kind. This accusation is absurd. Tell me about him." "He came to Italy 3 years ago. Works hard. Sends money to his mother in Morocco. He's never caused trouble." "Never." "Does he have strong religious views?" Imam Hassan shook his head firmly. "He's devout but moderate. He's even attended interfaith events at the Catholic Church. Father Antonio can tell you." Sophia made a note to visit Father Antonio Greco, the priest at Chiesa di San Marco. That afternoon, she found Father Antonio tending the church garden. He was 68, with gentle eyes and worn hands. "Yousef?" he said when she asked. "I know him. We've spoken many times. He helped repair our roof last spring. Refused payment. Said it was his duty to help neighbors." "Did he ever express hostility toward Catholic symbols?" "Never. Quite the opposite. He once asked me about the Virgin Mary's significance in our faith. He said Muslims also revere her. We had a beautiful conversation." Sophia returned to the evidence. The security footage from the cafe showed a figure near the shrine, but the quality was poor. The timestamp read 6:51 a.m. The figure's clothing appeared light-colored. The height seemed consistent with Yousef's build, but also with hundreds of other men. She requested additional footage from other businesses. Most had nothing useful. But then she found something interesting. Footage from a harbor camera, pointing out to sea but catching the edge of the coastal path. At 6:48 a.m., it showed someone walking northward on the path, away from the shrine, not toward it. The figure wore light clothing. The build seemed similar to Yousef. If this was Yousef, he was walking away from the crime scene before it happened. Sophia froze the frame and enhanced it as much as technology allowed. She couldn't make a definitive identification, but the timestamp was crucial. She interviewed Yousef again that evening. "Tell me exactly your route this morning," she said. Yousef drew it on a map. He'd left his apartment at 6:30 a.m., walked south along Via Roma, turned onto the coastal path, walked to the lighthouse at the southern end, then returned northward. What time did you pass the shrine? Around 6:35, going south. Then again around 6:50, returning north. Did you stop? No. I don't stop at the shrine. It's not my place. The timeline was beginning to create reasonable doubt. Porto Santo was dividing. Lines that had been invisible became boundaries. Italian residents avoided the immigrant neighborhood. Muslim families kept children home from school. The harbor, once a place of collaboration, became segregated. Local entrepreneur Giulio Ferretti organized a town meeting. He owned the largest fishing operation and employed both Italian and immigrant workers. But his motivation wasn't unity, it was preservation of his reputation and business. We need answers, he told the crowd of 200 packed into the community center. Our town is suffering. Tourism is down. Our people are afraid. Sophia attended the meeting, observing from the back. She watched how fear transformed into anger, how anger found targets. The police have their suspect, someone shouted. What are we waiting for? Chief Bellini stood to address the crowd. We're conducting a thorough investigation. We saw what we saw. Maria Conti interrupted. I know what I witnessed. But Sophia had interviewed Maria twice more since their first conversation. Each time, details had shifted. The certainty was eroding, even if Maria wouldn't admit it. Imam Hassan attempted to speak but was shouted down. The meeting ended with nothing resolved, tension higher than before. Sometimes the real damage isn't in what happened, but in what people believe happened. Sophia continued her investigation methodically. She examined Yousef's background thoroughly. Born in Casablanca. Educated through secondary school. No criminal record. References from previous employers were consistently positive. His social media showed a young man interested in football, cooking, and photography. Nothing radical. Nothing extreme. She interviewed his co-workers at the harbor. They described him as quiet, hardworking, reliable. He'd never expressed religious hostility. He'd attended 2 co-workers' weddings. He'd celebrated holidays with Italian families. He's one of us, said Marco Vitali, a 54-year-old fisherman who'd known Yousef for 2 years. This accusation is ridiculous. Yousef wouldn't hurt a fly. But public opinion had already solidified. The narrative was set. Immigrant destroys sacred Catholic symbol. It confirmed biases, justified fears, gave shape to anxieties. Sophia knew she needed more than character witnesses. She needed physical evidence. The forensic report came back with interesting findings. The marble fragments showed no trace of skin cells, fabric fibers, or biological material on their surfaces where hands would have gripped them. The pedestal base had been secured with ancient mortar that had degraded over decades. The statue's weight had been supported primarily by its position, not by the strength of its mounting. A structural engineer reviewed photographs and provided an opinion. The statue had become increasingly unstable over years of weathering. Heavy rain in August had likely accelerated mortar erosion. The statue could have fallen with minimal force, or even fallen spontaneously. Are you saying it could have been an accident? Chief Bellini asked Sophia. I'm saying the evidence doesn't support a deliberate destruction. The statue was precarious. Someone might have touched it, examining it, and caused it to overbalance. The witnesses saw someone push it. The witnesses saw someone near it, and then it fell. Their minds filled in the narrative. Sophia requested permission to conduct a reconstruction. She wanted to understand exactly what force would be required to topple the statue in its deteriorated condition. The prosecutor, reluctant to undermine the case, finally agreed. Meanwhile, Yousef remained in custody. His detention was extended pending trial. His mother in Morocco called daily, crying, asking questions he couldn't answer. In his cell, Yousef prayed 5 times daily. He wasn't praying for freedom. He was praying for truth. Sophia's reconstruction took place at dawn, when lighting conditions matched those of September 14th. She brought a structural engineer, a forensics expert, and a documentary crew to record everything. They constructed a replica pedestal with similar mortar degradation. They used a weighted mannequin matching the statue's dimensions and mass. They tested various scenarios: deliberate pushing, accidental contact, environmental factors. The results were revealing. With the mortar in its degraded state, surprisingly little force was needed to destabilize the statue. A strong push could do it, but so could a firm hand placed on the statue for balance, or even strong wind combined with ground vibration. The statue was an accident waiting to happen, the structural engineer concluded. Anyone could have triggered it without intending to. But Sophia found something else. While reviewing the original security footage frame by frame, using advanced enhancement software, she noticed a detail everyone had missed. The figure near the shrine appeared to be photographing it, not pushing it. The posture suggested someone holding a phone or camera up, not someone leaning forward to push. She cross-referenced this with Yousef's phone records. The phone company provided data showing he'd taken photographs on his morning walk. 4 photos between 6:30 and 6:55 a.m. The GPS metadata placed him at various points along the coastal path. "Can I see his phone?" Sophia asked Chief Bellini. "It's in evidence." They retrieved it. With permission, Sophia accessed the photo gallery. There were indeed 4 photos from that morning. One of the sunrise over the sea, one of a seabird on a rock, one of the lighthouse, and one of the harbor from above. No photo of the shrine. But the timestamp of the harbor photo was 6:51 a.m., precisely when the cafe security camera captured someone near the shrine. Sophia studied the photo closely. In the background, barely visible, was the cliff edge with the shrine. And in the foreground was Yousef's thumb, accidentally in the frame, a common photography mistake. But here was the crucial detail. The angle of the shot meant Yousef was standing north of the shrine, looking south, photographing the harbor. He couldn't have been at the shrine itself at that moment. The pieces were coming together, but they weren't forming the picture everyone expected. Sophia brought this evidence to the prosecutor. He reviewed it skeptically. "This proves he was near the shrine at the right time," the prosecutor said. "It proves he was north of the shrine, walking away, at the exact time the statue fell," Sophia corrected. "And it proves someone else was at the shrine." "Someone else?" the witnesses said. The witnesses saw a figure in light clothing. That description could match many people. Sophia had been thinking about this. She returned to the witness statements. All 3 described the figure as wearing Middle Eastern clothing or a religious robe. But the security footage wasn't clear enough to confirm this. What if witnesses had simply assumed the clothing based on location and time? She began investigating an alternative theory. Who else might have been near the shrine that morning? Who else wore clothing that could be mistaken for a jalaba in poor light? She reviewed registration data from nearby hotels. Several guests matched the general timing. One caught her attention: Thomas Brennan, an Irish tourist staying at Hotel Mediterraneo. He'd checked out on September 15th, the day after the incident. She tracked Brennan through credit card records. He was back in Dublin. She arranged a video call. Thomas Brennan, 32, appeared on screen looking confused. "I don't understand. What is this about?" Sophia explained the situation. "Were you near the clifftop shrine on the morning of September 14th? Brennan's face changed, recognition, then concern. "Oh God. Yes. I was there. I take early morning walks when I travel. I went up to see the statue. It's famous, right? What happened? I was taking photos. I'm interested in religious architecture. I got close to examine the pedestal, There was beautiful stonework. I might have touched it, just lightly, to steady myself on the uneven ground. And then... He paused. Then it just fell. I couldn't believe it. One moment it was there, the next it was tumbling off the cliff. Why didn't you report this? I panicked. I thought I'd be blamed. I'm a tourist. Who would believe me? I saw people coming, so I left quickly. I went back to my hotel, packed, and caught an early train out. I felt terrible about it, but I didn't know someone else was arrested. That's awful. Sophia felt the case shifting. What were you wearing that morning? A linen kaftan I'd bought in Morocco last year. Light-colored. I wear it for morning walks. It's comfortable. Can you describe exactly what you did? Brennan explained his movements. He'd approached the statue from the east, examined the base, placed his hand on it for balance while crouching to photograph details. The statue had rocked slightly. He'd stood up quickly, concerned. Then it had tipped. It was like it was barely attached. I barely touched it, I swear. Sophia recorded everything. This testimony, combined with the structural evidence and Yousef's alibi, created a completely different narrative. Sophia presented her findings to the prosecutor in a closed meeting. Chief Bellini attended, his expression growing more troubled as the evidence mounted. We have an innocent man in custody, Sophia concluded. The real cause was structural failure, accidentally triggered by a tourist who panicked and fled. The prosecutor reviewed the documentation. This is problematic. It's the truth, Sophia said firmly. The public is convinced otherwise. The witnesses made an honest mistake. They saw someone near the shrine, heard the crash, and assumed causation. But their descriptions are vague and contradictory under questioning. The security footage doesn't show what they claim. And we now have a confession from the actual person involved. Chief Bellini spoke up. We need to release Amrani immediately. And then what? The prosecutor asked. The town is already fractured. If we admit we arrested the wrong man, if we say this was an accident involving an Irish tourist who's now safely back in Dublin. We tell the truth, Sophia interrupted. That's what we do. The prosecutor agreed to release Yousef pending further investigation. He was released on September 22nd, 8 days after his arrest. Yousef walked out of the police station to find his community waiting. Both the Muslim community and, surprisingly, a small group of Italian supporters who'd never believed the charges. Father Antonio was there. He embraced Yousef. I knew, the priest said. I knew in my heart. But the broader community remained divided. The official statement was carefully worded, investigation ongoing. Insufficient evidence to proceed with current charges. Alternative theories being explored. It wasn't enough. Social media erupted with conspiracy theories. Some claimed a cover-up. Others doubled down on their original suspicions. The truth was too complicated, too nuanced for quick consumption. Sophia knew she needed more than just releasing Yousef. She needed to conclusively prove what happened. She arranged for Thomas Brennan to return to Porto Santo voluntarily. He agreed, driven by guilt about Yousef's imprisonment. On September 28th, he stood at a press conference with Sophia, Chief Bellini, and the prosecutor. Brennan told his story publicly. He showed his photographs from that morning. Dozens of images of various Porto Santo landmarks, including several of the shrine taken from different angles. The timestamps corroborated his account. His face was visible in selfies taken near the shrine. I made a terrible mistake by running, Brennan said, his voice shaking. I've caused an innocent man to suffer. I've caused this community to turn against itself. I'm deeply sorry. I only wanted to explain what I saw, what I experienced. The statue fell because it was unstable, not because anyone wanted to destroy it. The evidence was overwhelming. The structural report, the forensic analysis, Brennan's testimony and photographs, Yousef's alibi, the timeline that exonerated him. But would it be enough to heal Porto Santo? The prosecutor issued a formal statement. Based on comprehensive investigation, we have determined that the destruction of the Virgin Mary statue was accidental, caused by structural failure accidentally triggered by Mr. Thomas Brennan, a tourist examining the monument. All charges against Yousef Amrani are hereby dismissed with prejudice. The investigation is closed. Some residents accepted this immediately, relieved to have clarity. Others remained skeptical, unwilling to abandon their narrative. Still others felt shame at how quickly they'd rushed to judgment. Yousef returned to work at the harbor, but everything had changed. Some co-workers welcomed him back warmly. Others offered awkward apologies. A few avoided eye contact entirely. "How do you feel about what happened?" Marco Vitali asked him during a lunch break. Yousef was silent for a long moment. "Betrayed," he finally said. "I've lived here 3 years. I've worked beside you. I've been to your homes. And yet, when something bad happened, you were all ready to believe the worst of me." "Not all of us," Marco reminded him. "Enough of you." The conversation reflected a broader reckoning happening throughout Porto Santo. The incident had exposed fault lines many had preferred to ignore. Integration hadn't been as successful as they'd believed. Trust hadn't been as deep. Father Antonio organized an interfaith service, inviting both Catholic and Muslim community members. It was held in the church garden, neutral ground. About 80 people attended, a modest turnout, but significant. "We have all been reminded of our capacity for fear," Father Antonio said in his homily. "Fear of the other. Fear of change. Fear of losing what we hold sacred. But we have also been reminded that fear leads us astray. It makes us see enemies where there are neighbors. It makes us see malice where there is accident. It makes us forget that we are all, ultimately, human beings deserving of dignity and fair judgment." Imam Hassan added, "Our faiths may differ in practice, but we share fundamental values: justice, mercy, compassion, truth. When we abandon these values in favor of rushed judgment, we betray everything we claim to believe." Yousef attended the service but said nothing. His presence was statement enough. Thomas Brennan stayed in Porto Santo for a week, meeting with community leaders and attempting to make amends. He established a fund to restore the statue, donating the first €10,000 personally. "Money doesn't fix what happened," he acknowledged. "But I want to contribute something positive." The statue restoration became a community project. Italian artisans worked alongside immigrant craftspeople. The new statue would be installed with modern anchoring systems, properly engineered. A plaque would commemorate the incident and its lessons. Sophia completed her final report and prepared to return to her regular posting. Chief Bellini met with her before she left. "You did good work here," he told her. "I did what was necessary," Sophia replied. "But the real work is what comes next. This community has to decide what kind of place it wants to be." "What do you think will happen?" "Some will learn from this. Others won't. That's human nature. But at least the truth is established. That's something." Before leaving, Sophia visited Yousef at his apartment. He offered her tea, which she accepted. "What will you do now?" she asked. Yousef gazed out the window at the harbor. "I don't know. I thought about leaving. Going back to Morocco, or maybe trying another country. But that feels like running." "You don't owe this place anything." "Maybe not. But I owe myself something. I won't let fear and prejudice drive me away from a life I've built. That would be giving them power they don't deserve." Sophia nodded with respect. "That's brave." "Or stubborn," Yousef said with a slight smile, his first since the ordeal began. October brought cooler weather and gradual change to Porto Santo. The tourist season ended, leaving locals to navigate their new reality without outside eyes watching. The Muslim community had been traumatized by the false accusation. Several families had made plans to relocate. Others had built walls around themselves, no longer interested in integration if it meant being vulnerable to suspicion. Maria Conti, the shopkeeper who'd been a primary witness, struggled with her role in what happened. She'd been so certain of what she saw. The authorities had validated her certainty. The community had rallied around her testimony. Now that certainty had been revealed as flawed. She visited Yousef's apartment one evening, a difficult journey that took her into the immigrant neighborhood she'd rarely entered before. He answered the door with surprise. "Mrs. Conti, I owe you an apology," she said, her voice trembling. "I was wrong. I was so sure, but I was wrong. I helped put you in jail for something you didn't do." Yousef studied her face. He saw genuine remorse there, but also the ego wound of someone who'd been publicly corrected. "Come in," he said. They sat in his small living room. Maria explained how she'd convinced herself of what she'd seen, how confirmation bias had solidified her memory into false certainty, how she'd projected her vague anxieties about change onto a convenient target. "I'm not a bad person," she insisted. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did hurt me," Yousef replied quietly. "Good intentions don't erase consequences." "I know. I want you to understand I wasn't acting from hatred." Fear and hatred aren't as different as people think. Both treat people as less than human. The conversation was painful but necessary. Maria left without forgiveness. Yousef wasn't ready to offer that, but with understanding. CTA. Sometimes accountability means sitting with discomfort rather than seeking immediate absolution. Not everyone sought reconciliation. Giulio Ferretti, the fishing entrepreneur, maintained his suspicions despite the evidence. To him, the official explanation was too convenient, too politically correct. "They're protecting their narrative," he told supporters at a private gathering. "Muslim population is growing, authorities don't want conflict, so they manufacture this story about a tourist. We know what we know." His conspiracy theory found willing believers. For some people, evidence wasn't as powerful as the emotional satisfaction of their original judgment. This faction remained small but vocal. They organized protests when the new statue was unveiled in November. They distributed flyers questioning the investigation. They made life uncomfortable for the Muslim community through 1,000 small acts of hostility. Father Antonio confronted Giulio directly. "You're poisoning this town." "I'm protecting it," Giulio shot back. "You've become soft, Father. Too willing to compromise our traditions." "Our tradition is hospitality. It's compassion. It's seeing Christ in the stranger. You've forgotten that in favor of fear." But Giulio wasn't interested in theological debate. He'd made his identity about being right, and admitting error would require destroying that identity. The community divided into 3 groups: those who accepted the truth and sought healing, those who rejected the truth and clung to their narrative, and those who simply wanted to forget the entire incident. Yousef found himself navigating these factions daily. Some Italians went out of their way to be friendly, overcompensating for their previous suspicion. Others avoided him. A small minority remained openly hostile. He developed a thick skin. He also deepened his relationships with those who'd stood by him. His friendship with Marco Vitali strengthened. He became closer to Father Antonio, engaging in regular theological discussions that enriched both men. "You could leave," Father Antonio told him during one conversation. "Start fresh somewhere that doesn't know your story." "I could," Yousef agreed. "But then what?" I spend my life running from prejudice? It's everywhere. At least here, I know who stood with me when it mattered. The restoration of the statue became symbolic of the town's internal struggle. Italian and immigrant workers collaborated on the project, but tensions surfaced regularly. Arguments erupted over design details, installation methods, even lunch break arrangements. Yet they continued. The project manager, an Italian engineer named Luca Romano, insisted on equal representation in decision-making. When disagreements arose, he forced both sides to present their cases and find compromise. "We're not just building a statue," he told the crew. "We're proving we can build something together." The new statue took shape slowly. Crafted by a renowned artisan from Florence, it incorporated modern engineering while respecting traditional design. The anchoring system could withstand extreme weather and seismic activity. This statue wouldn't fall. As October progressed, Yousef noticed subtle changes. A few Italian neighbors began greeting him by name. Shop owners who'd previously served him with cold efficiency now made small talk. Children who'd been taught to fear him played near his building without parental interference. Progress wasn't universal, but it was real. Detective Sofia Russo visited Porto Santo one final time in late October. She wanted to see how her investigation's aftermath had unfolded. She met with Yousef at a cafe overlooking the harbor. "How are you managing?" she asked. "Some days are better than others," Yousef admitted. "I still have nightmares about the cell. I still feel people's eyes on me, wondering if maybe the police got it right the first time." The evidence was clear. Evidence doesn't change what people want to believe. Sophia understood this truth deeply. Her career had shown her repeatedly that facts and beliefs occupied different territories in human minds. "You're braver than most people realize," she told him. "Staying here, facing this community every day, refusing to be defined by their worst assumptions. That takes strength." Yousef smiled slightly. "Or maybe I'm just stubborn. My mother always said I was too stubborn for my own good." Before leaving Porto Santo, Sophia attended the final phase of the statue installation. The new Virgin Mary, gleaming white marble with reinforced internal structure, was lifted by crane onto its modernized pedestal. Dozens of residents gathered to watch. The crowd was mixed, Italian and immigrant, Catholic and Muslim, supporters and skeptics. They stood together in uneasy proximity, united temporarily by shared witness to this moment. Father Antonio blessed the new statue. Imam Hassan offered prayers for peace and understanding. The ceremony was brief, respectful, inclusive. When the crane lowered the statue into place, securing it permanently, spontaneous applause erupted. Not everyone joined in, but enough did to create a sound of collective relief. Perhaps the statue represented more than religious devotion. Perhaps it represented the possibility of repair. November brought winter storms to Porto Santo. Rain battered the new statue, wind tested its anchoring, waves crashed against the cliffs below. The statue held firm, just like the community slowly learning to rebuild trust. Yousef continued his morning walks, still passing the shrine as he had for 3 years. Now, occasionally, other walkers acknowledged him. One morning, an elderly Italian woman stopped him and said simply, "I'm glad you stayed," then continued her walk. These small moments accumulated, creating a different narrative than the one that had nearly destroyed him. Thomas Brennan's compensation fund supported not just statue restoration but interfaith community programs. Young people, less burdened by their parents' prejudices, came together for collaborative projects, forming friendships more easily. Yousef volunteered, teaching photography to students, showing them how to see beauty through different perspectives. Maria Conti joined the Interfaith Initiative, working alongside Yousef on event planning. Their interactions remained professional, courteous, not yet warm. Forgiveness was a longer journey, but accountability had begun. By December, The fishing industry stabilized as workers rebuilt functional cooperation. Tourist bookings recovered. Father Antonio and Imam Hassan established a permanent interfaith council, meeting monthly to address concerns before they escalated. On the winter solstice, the community held a festival of lights. Italian Christmas luminaries glowed alongside Muslim Ramadan lanterns. Yousef stood watching families mingle, understanding why he'd stayed. Running away would mean they won. Staying means I get to define myself, just a man who works, walks, prays, and lives his life. Thomas Brennan returned in January, meeting Yousef for coffee. They discovered unexpected common ground and began building something beyond guilt, understanding between two flawed humans caught in circumstances larger than themselves. The statue stands stronger than before. Porto Santo's story didn't end with perfect reconciliation. Some wounds remained too deep. But enough people chose differently. Enough recognized that communities are built from the willingness to repair what breaks. The impossible thing wasn't the statue's fall. The impossible thing was what happened afterward. A community that could have destroyed itself chose instead to rebuild, proving that transformation, however difficult and incomplete, remains possible when ordinary people act with courage, honesty, and compassion.